Here I'm going to feature some really cool effects created by one of my subscribers. He submitted this to me recently. Okay, dear Dr. Bessey, I highly appreciate your YouTube series, Hidden Structures, especially the videos dealing with Bessey sequences posted recently. Find attached an application I worked out. It's actually two applications, as we'll see. I am a retired math teacher. He's living in, I believe, Austria right now. And he's the author of numerous books. I looked him up, and that is true. Numerous books on math-based magic. And here is a URL that will take you to a library that features most, if not all, of his publications. Kind regards, Werner Miller. So I thought we would take a look at what this subscriber's come up with. So given his credentials, if you look at all of the publications he's put out, perhaps none of us should be surprised by the ingenuity of what he's doing in both of these applications. So I thought we would step through these, and I'll tie it to my Bessey sequence series. So the first one is over here on the left. So I'll go ahead and just demonstrate it, and then we'll step through how it works and why it works, actually. Okay, so what we need is we need the 4 queens, or 4 of a kind. So any 4 of a kind would do just fine. So I went ahead and just followed his recommendation there, the 4 queens. I'll move those over so you can see them. And then 4 what are called spot cards, or just number cards. That's what a lot of us call them, just number cards. Okay, so non-face cards. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just stack these 2 sets of 4 cards on top of each other. And then we're going to perform, and you can follow along here, a false cut. I've shown on my channel many different ways. If you do an overcoding, meaning spell out half or more than half of the cards, it preserves these blocks here, as we can see right here. So there's a number of ways of supposedly mixing the cards without really changing the fundamental relationship here. Okay. So he recommends a mange. It doesn't actually matter which one, over, under, over, which is wonderful. So we'll do it over, under, over, under, over, under, over. Okay? And then from there, what he does is he says, okay, go ahead and mange shuffle the top 4 as a group of 4. Okay, so what that means is you go ahead and push over the top, and then you can do over, under, or under, over. So here's the second card, third card goes over, under, fourth card goes over. Okay, so we've manged, shuffle the top 4, and then you do the same thing for the bottom 4. You mange, shuffle those, and then you can randomly stack these, actually, if you would like. And what that will do is it will actually arrange those cards in a Bessey arrangement, this Bessey sequence. And so you can probably see this without me actually pointing it out, but if you focus on the face cards here, on the queens, so we have a queen right there, so that's associated, you could be associated with 1. Come over here to the 4th position, there's a queen. Come over here to the 6th position, it's a queen. 7th position is a queen. Okay? So this is in this special arrangement that we've been using in this series devoted to Bessey sequences. So what we've done there is just a very clever way of starting with a block of 4 cards on top, a block of 4 cards on the bottom. You do a mange shuffle, a full one, and then you mange shuffle the top 4 cards, and then separately from those, you mange shuffle the bottom 4 cards, and then random stack. And as we'll see, that's actually another way. In fact, I went out of my way to kind of write it up here. We'll talk about it in just a few minutes, but it's a really cool way, actually, to go from this kind of structure to a Bessey sequence. So very, very clever, okay? So, and then what he does from here is you can go ahead and perform any of the shuffles that we've been using throughout this series. Now, the one that he happened to choose to focus on is this dealing out into 4 pairs. Okay, so you've seen this before, and you'll know from watching the series that we can stack from left to right or right to left. We can even do a leapfrog stacking. Okay, so we can do a few more of those. But really, at this point, you can do any of the 20, 30 shuffles that I've shown you. Maybe now we'll go from right to left and actually do a leapfrog kind of stacking. And so you would do as many of those as you like, or the spectator likes, and then you can mix in many of the other shuffles as well. If you want to throw in a Klondike, that would be just fine. You can ask the spectator, how many of these would you like? You want 3 of them, so perform 3 of them. You can do an Australian down, under, 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 down. Last one goes on top. We're all done. Okay, so any one of those, like I said, 20 to 30 shuffles so far that I have demonstrated and explained. And then from there, he does something that's extremely clever as well. And the reality is, Werner Miller actually came up with these very, very quickly, because it wasn't soon after I posted these Bessey sequences that he shot off this email to me with these 2 wonderful applications. So once again, it kind of shows that maybe he did indeed write a lot about math-based magic, which he did. So he's just very, very ingenious. Okay, so what he recommends here is, if you would like, it's kind of optional, but if you like to kind of peek the bottom card, Queen. Okay. Now, what that will mean in the end, when we go to like separate these into 2 little packets, it means that the queens will be the ones that are dealt first to the table, and the numbered cards will still be in your hand. If you forget to do that, it's not the end of the world, because we're going to go ahead and succeed nonetheless, as you'll see. Okay, so here is another clever part here. So what he says to do is to go ahead and spell off 4 of a kind. 4 of a kind. And the spectator, of course, saw that we had 4 of a kind. They saw that we had 4 queens, which could have been freely chosen by them. So how you do this is you spell off without reverse counting. You go F, O, U, R, put the next one down, 4. And now we're going to do of, O, F, put the next one down, and now we're going to do A. So we push one over, the next one goes down, and then we'll do kind, K-I-N-D, K-I-N-D, the next one goes down. And so what this has done is it has separated essentially the ones from the zeros. So as I mentioned, the queens would be the ones dealt to the table first, and the number cards would be the ones still in your hand. So there you go. That is the first effect that he mentions here. He calls it version 1. Now the second effect uses, and so it's down here, version 2. Now here you need particular cards, because he's going to spell out the card names. He's going to be spelling out kings. So, technically you could use jacks or 9s or 4s, anything that has 4 letters in its name. And then the other one, he's going to use 7s. So really any card value that has 5 letters in it would work just as well. Okay, so how this works here is, now what he has you do, so we'll do it his way first, which is great. And then I'll show you another way to accomplish the same thing that works equally well. So what he says is go ahead and just openly alternate these. So king, 7, king, 7, king, 7, king, 7. Okay, that's great. So it's set up this alternating packet here. And then what he does is he says, okay, go ahead and ask the spectator to cut the cards wherever they would like. Okay. Now technically what we have just built is a cyclic construction. It alternates 7s with the kings in some order. Okay. So because it's cyclic, you can do a free cutting of the cards and it won't change that fundamental property of the packet. My viewers know that we can actually do a full Charlier shuffle if you would like. And I imagine Werner knows that as well. He's probably just trying to keep the steps down. So you can do a Charlier shuffle if you would like, or just have the spectator cut the cards. That would just be fine. Okay, and then from here, what we're going to do is we're going to count out the top 4 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4. So think about what that does to their order. It reverses their order, and then you just set down the other cards as is. So this is important. You don't reverse count these, just those. Okay, I'm just going to close those up. And then what we're going to do is something kind of cool. We're going to go ahead and Klondike shuffle. We're going to Klondike a pair here and a pair here. We're going to Klondike a pair here and a pair here. Okay, very neat and tidy. And then he says you can stack from left to right or right to left, and that's true. For my viewers, you could actually do a leapfrog kind of stacking if you would like, from left to right or right to left. It won't hurt anything. Okay, and then from here what he recommends is to perform an alternate Klondike, which is something we've shown you, but an alternate Klondike into 4 piles. Okay, so this will be reminiscent of what we just did a moment ago with random stacking. Excuse me, I keep forgetting I'm going off the screen because of our little write-up on the left. Random stacking from right to left or left to right is fine, or even a leapfrog. Why don't we do a leapfrog just for fun, if you remember that. And you can do as many of these as the spectator calls for. You truly can. You can say, okay, how would you like these? You want right to left this time? You want to do a leapfrog? No, just right to left? Okay, we'll do that. I'll just follow your instructions here. Okay, so that's the one that he recommends down here for his write-up, which is just fine. Now you know that you can do any one of the 25 to 30 shuffles that I've shown you so far that actually preserve Bessey sequences. So any of them could be done. But we'll go ahead and just finish in the way that he's recommended. And this is a wonderful finish also, just as in the first application. So what he has you do here is we're going to spell out 4 kings, 4 sevens. Okay, and then that's going to help us create 2 piles of 4 cards each. So this is how it's done this time. So it's different than the first application. So what you do is you begin spelling 4 by moving 1 card to the bottom for each letter. Now once we get to the R, which is the last letter in the word 4, we'll set that card down. Okay? So we're going to do F, O, U, R, 4. Now we're going to spell kings. K, I, N, G, S. Kings. Now we're going to spell 4 again. F, O, U, R. Almost forgot. And then we're going to spell sevens. S, E, V, E, N, S. Okay? And then, oh, I forgot, I should have peeked. I could have told you, peek at the bottom. You know, peek at whatever the bottom card was before all of this, and that would tell you what cards are here. And it ends up that you would have seen a 7, by the way. Sorry about that. I kind of left off that nice little extra step. So when you go to reveal these will indeed be the 4 sevens. and these will be the 4 kings. Okay, so that's a demonstration of each of these applications submitted to me by Werner Miller. Okay, so let's look more closely at why they work. So why don't we work backwards, if that's okay? We've just now shown the 4 kings and the 4 sevens. So let's look a little more deeply at this one, and then we'll go back to the first one with the 4 queens and the 4 number cards and look more deeply at that effect. Okay, so the 4 kings and the 4 sevens. Okay, so what is going on here? And what additional things could you do that might further convince the spectator that the cards are beyond the knowledge of anybody? Okay, so here, what I have here is I have a little write-up. Okay, so let's just kind of go back to the beginning. So 4 kings and 4 sevens. Okay, so if you remember, Werner Miller had us do was alternately stack these. So we're creating this alternating structure of kings and sevens, which is great. You just do that openly, and most spectators won't think much of that. In fact, in some ways, it's beginning to mix the kings with the sevens really well, because you're like perfectly interlacing them, and then from there you're going to mix further anyway. Okay, so that should allay all suspicions that the cards are going to end up in some order. Okay, so you can do it that way. You can go ahead and just build it left, right, left, right, left, right. Now, another way to do it, which is nice as well, is go ahead and just leave them in blocks, kind of like we did with the queens, that first application. Well, a really nice way to get an alternating packet, if the top half is of one kind and the bottom half is the other, and you have an even number of cards, of course. Let me just show you face up, and you can kind of see how it works. So if I do a Klondike shuffle here, that will immediately create an alternating structure. Now, what's nice about doing a Klondike here is it's in the same motif of the entire application, because guess what? We're going to be using the Klondike shuffle a fair amount throughout all of this. So we start off with a Klondike shuffle. Okay, so that will fit in just perfectly. Now we have our alternating structure, which is great. Okay. Now, since it is cyclic, as I mentioned in the performance, you really could do a Charlier shuffle, or as Werner mentions here, you can just have the spectator cut the cards freely. Okay, that's fine. So that takes us. So we started here. We did a Klondike. You can do an optional Charlier cut. And then remember, what did he do? Now, I'm going to do all of this face up so that you can see what's going on, okay? So what he said was deal out. I'll deal it out up here, if that's okay. So I'm going to, maybe I'll go, let's see, maybe I'll go like this. Maybe I'll do it like that. So deal out the top 4, okay? And then set the other 4 down as is. You don't change their order. If you go back in the video, you'll see that that's exactly what we did. Okay, so we just dealt to the table the top 4. Well, as I mentioned, it reverses the order of the cards. And then from here, so we just kind of like close these up. Now remember, we're going to Klondike. So we'll be taking the 7 and the king together, and then this king and 7 together, and similar thing here, but kind of opposite. A king and 7 first, and then a 7 and a king. So let me go ahead and just close those up. And now we're going to perform a side-by-side Klondike. So we're going to go like, say, one little pair here, the remaining pair there. Very good. Okay, and then we'll pick up this little packet, and we'll do a pair right here and a pair right there. Okay. Now let me just show you what's underneath these, because this is what makes it work here. If you stack these pairs from left to right, or from right to left, or do a leapfrog, like I've been showing you in this series, you will get a Bessey sequence for this packet of 8 cards. where like the ones will be the kings and the zeros will be the sevens, you know, however you want to assign those labels. Okay, so for example, if we stack, so you imagine, so we're going to stack this on top of that, this on top of that, we're just stacking from left to right, this on top of that, where does that bring us? Maybe I'll go left to right so you can kind of see what's going on. I'll just fan them out here. So what are we looking at here? Is not this a Bessey sequence? We have the sevens over here. You can think of those as ones, I suppose, in this particular situation, and then the kings are zeros. And then they switch places. The kings are on the outer edge, and the sevens are in the middle. Okay, so that's exactly what the Bessey sequence is doing, right? Okay, and we could have arrived at this or its inversion, which just means, you know, you read it in the opposite order, stacking from left to right or right to left, or a leapfrog stacking. Okay, really, really nice. So that is a way to go from a block of cards that constitute the top half and a block of cards that constitutes the bottom half, and then we want to put these in that special arrangement of, you know, so in fact I haven't written it here, but when you stack these left to right or right to left or leapfrog stack, you will get either this or you can read it in the opposite direction. You'll get the inversion. Okay? Now once it's in that special configuration, it's protected against so many systematic mixing routines for small packet sizes. In fact, just about all of the ones that I am aware of. Okay, the only one that I have found so far that fails is the under-down instead of the down-under. Down-under is the Australian shuffle. It works great. The under-down ends up transposing two of our cards to prevent us from achieving or preserving this. Okay, but every other one I've looked at works. There probably are some others that don't, and I'm sure there are others that do, that I haven't even thought of or I'm aware of. Okay, so if you find additional shuffles that work, please send them my way, and I very likely will feature them on my channel. And I can give you all the credit and the glory, like I did to Werner Miller here. I mean, he deserves it. What a wonderful job he's done with these two applications. Okay, and then down here, I just written out what we could do, stack left to right, right to left, your leapfrog. And then from there, you just do all of your shuffling. And then the final bit, yeah, that's right, we need to show you his very clever, so we're kind of in this situation here. Now we're needing to pull the ones and the zeros apart, the ones and zeros apart. Well, the way I've been doing it, which is just fine, is I'll go ahead and give you one, I denote this as 1, so this is a 1, and I give myself the next 2 as, quote, zeros, and I give you the 1, give myself a 0, and you get a 1, 1, and I get 0. Okay, that's one way to do it, which is just fine. But what I like about the way he's doing it is the system for kind of creating these two piles of 4 cards is directly linked to the particular card values that we're using. Okay, so what he did was he said, okay, well, let's go ahead, we're going to spell 4 kings and then 4 sevens. Okay, and then we'll be setting down a card for each spelling. That gives us 4 cards and 4 remaining. Okay, so if you remember how the spelling works, F-O-U, and then you put the R down, and then it's 4 kings, what we spell first. So K-I-N-G, set the next one down for S, kings. The best way to see this is to kind of do it with them fanned out, because then you can see how you're going to land on the cards that you need. So we spelled 4 kings. Now we need to get to this one. Well, we could get to that one as well, but he's going to get to this one next. So how do you get, well, there's 4 positions you need to go through. So we're going to spell 4, O, U, and then we'll put the R down, right? F, O, U, R. Very good. And now we need to spell sevens. Okay, so sevens. Well, what is that going to do? That's going to move this card. So we're going to do S-E-V-E-N. That brings this one to the top, and we set it down as the S in sevens, right? So S-E-V-E-N, S. So there you go. So sevens, okay? And you can see that because of the card that we started with at the beginning of the packet before the spelling, it guaranteed that the kings would be dealt first and then the sevens would be left in your hand. Okay, very, very nice. Okay, so that is the kind of second application. So let's go back to the application with the queens and kind of step through what was going on there a bit more deeply than we have so far. Now this is a wonderful way to also set up a packet. Now this time what we're going to do is we're going to go from a block of cards. Now I suppose that's what I did. I guess I should clarify that. When we were doing the example with the sevens and the kings, he jumped right here, which is fine. He alternately stacked those cards, the kings and the sevens. I started with them in blocks, kind of like we're going to do here, okay? And then I got to this step by just a Klondike shuffle. So I just had to do one extra step to get there. So if you want to, in both cases here, you could actually start with the top four cards being a group of interest and the bottom four cards being a group of interest. You can use that same structure type for both of these. Okay, so what did he do for the queens? Now this is exactly what he did. I'm not going to really add anything here. I'm not going to modify what he did. So he started with four of a kind. It actually doesn't matter what they are. So four queens and then four other cards. Okay. I suppose in some ways you could have these be four of a kind as well. And then you could really say, wow, four of a kind. We got them back into sets of four. But let's go with the way he did it here. So we have number cards, four of them, and then four face cards. Okay. So what he did first was he did a mange shuffle. Okay, so what will that do? Well, you just try it out. Let's do it over, under, over, under, over, under, over. Well, what does that do? Well, I have a little picture there as to what it does, but okay, this is what it'll always create. It'll have on the outer edges a pair of cards of the same kind, and then the middle four will be the other four cards of interest. And here it's the four of a kind. Okay, so that's performing a single mange on the packet of 8 cards. Now, if you go ahead and perform a mange shuffle, either an over, under, or an under, over, on the top 4 cards kind of separately. So what you do is you go, push that one off, and maybe we'll do over, under. So over, under, over, break. It's like you're done with this little packet. And now you're going to perform that same thing with the bottom ones. Push that one over, under, over. Okay? And so now we have 2 piles. The queens on the outer edges, right there. And then, as you might imagine, we have the number cards on the outer edges for the other set of 4. Okay? So if you look at these are just 2 halves of a Bessey sequence, where the division of the cards is queens as perhaps like 1s, and then number cards as the 0s. Okay? So it wouldn't actually matter how you stack these. It's going to be a Bessey sequence. And that's for the simple reason that a 50% cut of a Bessey sequence is a Bessey sequence. So if you take these and move them down here, it just gives you the inversion or the reversal of this one, and it's still a Bessey sequence. Or another way to think about it is a reassignment of the zeros and ones. Zeros become ones and ones become zeros. Okay, so that is doing what he recommended there. And so now we have it in our special structure. And so you can put this through just tremendous mixing of the sort I've been showing you in this series on Bessey sequences. And then from there, the way he finishes, so let me just show you over here. Do you remember we spell out for of a kind? Okay. Now, instead of like transferring a card for each letter in the name to the bottom kind of thing, what we're doing is we're just pushing over the letters now, instead of like transferring the quote letters or cards. Okay, so what we do is we're going to spell out for of a kind in this way. So you just do a F, O, U, R. Now, this is different than what we did with the kings. With the kings, we would have put down the card associated with the last letter in the name we just spelled. Here we don't. We put down the next one. So there goes the ace. So that's for, and that's for of, O, F. And then maybe I need to go back to this and just show you. O, F pushed off. The next one's a 6. Okay. Now we're going to do A. So for of a kind. So we're going to do A. So you push off the top card. The next one goes down. For of a. And now we're going to spell kind. And once we spell kind, we put down the card after the D. So K, I, N, D. That next numbered card goes down. And so that will guarantee to separate a Bessey sequence into two packets where one consists of what I've labeled ones here, and the other packet consists of what I've labeled zeros. Okay? So a wonderful application shared with me by a subscriber who I really think you should check out. I've been looking at some of his offerings for publications there, and they all look extremely interesting, actually. So take a look. I think if you just search on his name, you'll probably find this library. It's kind of a funny name. I'm going to show my ignorance here. I wasn't even aware of this library. Of course, you know, they spelled it with a Y there. So if you click on that, oh, I guess I can even bring it up. So here it is. So here's Werner Miller and his many, many publications. Card effects and clever routines. So these are things that you can look at. He has a lot of things on like magic squares. So he doesn't confine himself to cards in any way. He does a lot. And a lot of his books, I think, are offered in German as well as English. So anyway, take a look. I thought that was absolutely amazing, what he was able to come up with there. Man, this really is amazing. This is page 2. This is page 2, and then there's like 3 pages of just scored with 83 publications here. Man, oh man, oh man. The thing that I appreciate, as far as I know, he hasn't reported to me that I've presented something that I believe is actually original, but it's already known or out there. So he hasn't told me that yet. I hope he doesn't. I mean, if it's true, I need to know. But as far as I know, anything I claim is original to me, to my knowledge, is original. So anyway, take a look at his website there, and you know, pick up some of these little publications and add those to your mathematical repertoire. I imagine a lot of them, or maybe most of them, are mathematical in nature. So, so thank you for watching. Appreciate you watching this series on Bessey sequences. And take a look at the other ones. And if subscribers send me some other really cool applications, I very well may feature those and tie them into the ones already presented in this series on Bessey sequences.